So today we are talking about wave interactions, and then you do have another practice assignment on wave interactions. Again, a wave is just a disturbance that travels. We call it a wiggle in time and space. In this unit, we're only focusing on mechanical waves, and those are waves that can travel through a solid, a liquid, or a gas. They have to have a medium. If there's no medium, there is no mechanical wave. Mechanical waves are going to include sound and water waves. Remember, they don't include light. Light can travel through space, so we'll be talking about light in the next unit. So a wave can interact with matter in a lot of different ways. These interactions are going to happen when waves pass from one medium to another, or when waves bump into each other. That can also happen. We have 5 types of interactions that we're going to talk about: reflection, refraction, diffraction, resonance, and superposition. So we're starting off with reflection, and this is just the change in the direction of a wave whenever it bounces off something. So just like when you're looking in the mirror, you see your reflection, that's your image bouncing off of the mirror. Well, waves bounce off things too, like ocean waves show reflection whenever they bounce off cliffs or seawalls. You see that big giant splash, then they come back down. That's a reflection. Reflections can also happen with sound waves. For example, an echo. If you've ever heard your echo before, that's your sound bouncing off something and coming back to you. That's why you can hear yourself in your echo. There's also focal points of sound. This is whenever sound waves bounce off a barrier and the sound waves meet together in one certain location. So some buildings were built a long time ago, not now, with long hallways with focal points to where if you're talking at one end of the hallway, someone can hear you at the other end because of the sound reflection meeting together at one spot. Houses aren't really built like that anymore. I guess some are. It depends on the house you have and how it's built. So concrete walls are going to reflect sound a lot. That's why your gymnasiums, auditoriums, places that we want loud sounds, that's why they're made out of concrete. Think about all the pep rallies you've ever been to and how loud they get. And that's just because all the sound keeps bouncing off. There are other places like movie theaters that actually need to absorb the sound because they don't want the sound bouncing off. They don't want interference. An example can be a movie theater. So the walls of a movie theater are meant to absorb the sound. So that way it's not continuously bouncing off the walls and it's not interacting with the new sounds in the new scenes. Another type of reflection is sonar. For example, echolocation is used to reflect sound waves to determine distances or to locate things. Bats, dolphins, submarines, they all use sonar, which is a type of echolocation. So they send sound waves out, then it reflects back, and then they're able to tell how far things are or where things are. So when a wave hits a loose end, it's going to return in the same direction. This can be whenever a wave is moving and it's free to move up and down. So this is just a rule of reflection, something you don't really need to know, but it's just a rule of how waves reflect. But most of the time, waves hit a fixed end. This is an end that cannot move up and down. It's kind of like a brick wall or your hand being held very tightly. When that happens, the wave is going to invert. So instead of being on the same crest, it's going to go from a crest to a trough. And inversion just means it flips vertically, flips upside down. So on a loose end, it stays the same. And on a fixed end, it moves. It flips. And this is just a video of showing that. So this is going to be a fixed end. It can move up and down. Sorry, it can't move up and down. So that's how you see the wave flip. It goes from left to right. Now this is a loosened. And it comes back. So it's only flipping when it hits his hand because his hand is a fixed end. Number 2 is refraction. Sometimes waves are going to pass from one medium to another. For example, they're going to go from a solid to a liquid or from a gas to a solid. And that's when refraction happens. It's when the wave changes as it passes through different mediums. One example can be water waves. Water waves are going to travel faster when the water is the deepest. That's why you have a lot of surfers swimming out to the deep end of the ocean, because they want those big giant waves that are traveling faster. Waves are going to travel a lot slower whenever they get to the shallow end. They're going to decrease in wavelength, they're going to bend, and they're going to move slower. That's why when the waves come to you, when you're on the beach, you know, your toes are in the sand, the water's hitting you. Yes, waves might be harsh, but they're not as harsh as if you were in the actual deep end of the ocean where the boats and the surfers are. Those water waves are a lot faster. Sound waves also deal with refraction, and you might have experienced this one time in your life if you've ever sucked on helium and you've noticed that your voice changes. Well, that's the sound waves changing because of a gas. That gas is a different medium than regular oxygen. So you're not allowed to breathe in carbon dioxide, but if you ever did go through carbon dioxides, you're going to have air that's denser. So that way it's going to sound a lot louder when it's carbon dioxide, deeper. You're going to have a deeper voice. When amplitude's going to decrease in helium, that's why whenever you do suck on helium and you talk, you notice you have a sort of chipmunk voice. That's kind of a lower voice because helium's decreasing that because helium's denser than air. Oh, this is Morgan Freeman on helium. Another thing that sound waves experience with refraction is hearing sounds at night versus in the day. Way back in the day, if you've ever played baseball or anything at night, you probably have noticed that sounds are crisp and clearer, and that's because sound waves actually travel slower at night. And because they're traveling slower, you can actually hear them better. During the day, the air is warmer, so sound travels upwards and you can't really hear those sound waves as well as you can at night when the air is cooler and the sound waves are traveling down. So it's a lot better to hear sound at night than in the day. Number 3 is diffraction. Basically, all this means is that waves can go around barriers. They're going to go through any openings that they can because they want to continue on their paths. Water waves do this all the time. If you've ever seen oceans or movies with oceans, you can see that the water's splashing around the rocks in the water to go around them. Sound waves do this all the time. If you're listening to a radio in one room, you can often hear it in another room because the sound waves are traveling around the walls. Number 4 is resonance. This is when an object with a natural frequency causes another object to vibrate with the exact same frequency. And a perfect example of this can be swinging on a swing. Your swing actually has a natural frequency, and I'm sure you've noticed this before. But once you start moving on a swing with the right pumping of your legs and pulling back, you're going to start to increase that swing. And that's because you're matching the frequency of the swing. Eventually, your match is going to be so perfect that you actually lift the swing up off the ground, it feels like. That's you matching the frequency of the swing. Here in class, we would be using tuning forks. If you hit one tuning fork, the other tuning fork would be able to start moving. It's kind of hard to hear it on a video, but I promise you that hitting one tuning fork causes the other tuning fork to move. I wish we were here in class so I could show you that. Shahir, you're here, but I don't have them. Sorry. Another example of matching resonance can be breaking glass, and I'm sure you've seen this in movies probably before. I hope you've never tried this at home. Don't try this at home. But if you match the frequency of a glass, you can actually shatter the glass because the resonance is going to cause it to vibrate so much. But you have to match the frequency, the right pitch. It can't be too high, it can't be too low. It has to be an exact match. Oh, let me share the sound. You can't hear the sound.
Mom, look.
It's about to shatter glass.
It'll never. Mom, I broke it!
So again, you have to match the exact same frequency in order to match the resonance to get it to vibrate to shatter the glass. Do not try that at home. Here's another example of resonance. The Tacoma Bridge actually was not built sturdy enough.
It was built at a cost of over $6 million. But misfortune overtakes the great structure. These are some of the most amazing pictures ever recorded by a
Now we know how to build bridges a lot better.
The world's third largest suspension bridge.
But what was happening was the wind was causing the bridge to move, just like you would on a swing. The more the bridge moved, the more the resonance of the frequency of the bridge matched. So it kept moving more and more and more.
Only a 35-mile-an-hour wind is blowing, but this apparently sets up a rhythmic swinging of the bridge, which increases with each swing.
Again, it just kept moving more and more and more.
Finally, the swinging road and the suspension cables give way and plunge into the water below. Fortunately, the only casualties were a car stalled on the bridge and a dog.
Yes, a dog. Ah, I did not mean to click that, sorry. But that's resonance. Just like you would feel it on a swing, the bridge felt it. And then lastly, we have superposition. This is when waves collide and then they can combine. They're going to come together at the same place at the same time. And this is because waves come together like forces. They're a type of medium that can interact with each other. You can add them, you can subtract them. They're just like forces. We have two types of superposition: constructive interference and destructive interference. During interference, the amplitudes of wave can combine to create a new wave. So these are going to act like vectors. Crests are going to be positive numbers because they go up. Troughs are going to be negative numbers because troughs go down. With constructive interference, just think of construction. You build up. That's what happens. Two identical waves arrive at the same point in exactly the same phase. Crests go with crests, troughs go with troughs, and then they come together and they go higher. They increase their amplitude. Here we have A and B coming together. It matches together with A and B, goes higher, and then they go apart. Waves don't stay together, but they're going to continue traveling in their directions that they're originally traveling in. They don't stay together and continue that path. They just meet up for a moment and then they pass each other. So again, two waves come together, they increase their amplitude, and that's constructive interference. So with sound waves, this is when you hear music a lot louder. Typically you have two speakers, one on each side, and that's so that the sound waves can come together, be amplified, so you can hear them a lot more clearly. Destructive interference is the opposite. This is when waves meet out of phase. For example, we have one crest and one trough. They're in opposite directions, and sometimes the amplitude's going to decrease so much that it's going to completely cancel out the wave for that moment. So here we have a crest for A, a trough for B. They're the same size. So when they meet up, they cancel out, and then they continue their paths. Again, they just cancel each other out. So an example of complete destructive interference where it totally cancels out sound can be noise canceling headphones. And you've seen these before. They use them for people that work with machines, jet engines, very loud sounds. Sometimes you also have noise canceling headphones if you want to buy them yourself so you can listen to your music better so you don't hear all the outside sounds.
Hey guys, I'm Jason with Sonic Electronics, and noise canceling, and they give you the peace and quiet you need to. So if you're curious about noise canceling us from fully enjoying our music, active noise canceling utilizes
fast
into
forward
the
it
headphone.
too.
On the other hand, it seeks to cancel out the background noise instead of trying to physically block it. Here's how it applies to headphones. Sound travels through the air in the form of waves, each with a particular shape. This is where the active noise canceling technology comes in. It has small microphones that detect the frequencies in a given environment. The digital processor then determines which sound waves are required to cancel the unwanted sound wave, and then amplifies it through the headphones. To put it simpler, imagine a positive sound and a negative sound created at almost the same time. These sounds cancel each other out and bring the listener closer to a level of total silence.
So that's how noise canceling headphones work.
The other slip.
But again, they
I've got
could
a
amplify
demonstration
each
here
other
on a little pond
and
where we can see this with
they
water
could
waves.
cancel each other
I have
out.
two
So
sources of ripples, which are basically like the two slits. When I create ripples with a single source, they travel out with circular wavefronts. Nothing particularly surprising there. But if I add a second source of ripples, then we start getting an interesting pattern.
So where you see
This
the blank
pattern is
lines,
created
that's
by the
destructive
ripples in the two
interference. There's no
sources
waves there.
interacting
And
with
where
each
you
other.
see the waves, that's
Where they
constructive
meet up peaks
interference,
with
where you
peaks and
see the
troughs with
waves.
troughs, the amplitude of the wave is increased. That's what we call constructive interference. But if the peak from one wave meets up with the trough from the other, then we get destructive interference, and there's basically no wave there.
So it's not really that common to have complete constructive interference and complete destructive interference, but it can happen. It's more common to have partial interference. So these are when the amplitudes don't meet up with the exact amount. So typically, we're going to get a resultant wave that has a lot of amplitudes, a lot of destructive constructive interference, and this is what we call partial interference. Another example can be beats. This is when we have the same amplitude but different frequencies, and I love beats the most because this is where you get the sound wow, 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 wow. Again, I can't do it here, but I have a video. So if you can hear it bouncing back and forth, that's a beat. All right, so those are the 5 types of wave interactions. Remember, reflection bounces, refractions pass through barriers, diffractions go around barriers, resonance is when a certain object with a frequency causes another frequency to happen, and superposition is when waves combine. Go ahead and do your practice assignment, and that's it. If you have any questions, stay on. If not, you're free to go.